Morning, everybody. I want to start today with a meditation. Here's what I want us to do. I want you to think a few minutes about some of the things that you have done for other people in the last week or so. Maybe it was a kind word, maybe some other charitable act, maybe a caring touch. Just think of something that you've done for someone else in the past little bit, especially if it was a stranger, and especially if it was for someone you're not really inclined to do something for. Take just a few moments. Now, after having thought about what so that you did, some of the things that you've done, I want you to think this. Think of the smile. Think of the smile that you put on Jesus' face, because loving neighbor is loving Jesus. Think about that. How does that make you feel to put a smile on Jesus' face? Isn't that a nice meditation? Isn't that nice? Do you remember how today's gospel in Luke, do you remember how it starts out? It starts out this way. The two disciples recounted what had taken place on the way. So today's gospel picks up right in the middle of a story. What had taken place on the way? What story are we right in the middle of? We're right in the middle of the story of the disciples on the way to Emmaus. Two of Jesus' disciples were leaving Jerusalem, and they were trying to piece everything together, all they had seen and all they had heard. It was so confusing. It was so crazy. What in the world was going on? You see, the one they had invested in, this Jesus of Nazareth, the one they thought was the Messiah, the one they thought was going to change everything, well, he turned out to be a scam. Oh, this Jesus, he paraded into Jerusalem on Passover like he was the king of the Jews. But some king he turned out to be. He ended up stripped naked and wearing a crown of thorns, and then they nailed him. They nailed him to a cross, and they hung him to a tree. They crucified him. And any halfway knowledgeable Jew knew exactly what they meant. Any Jew that knew the scriptures, it was clear in the Torah that whoever was hung from a tree was cursed. Cursed. Jesus was a scam. And just as soon as they're getting the heck out of town, they heard this rumor. Some of the women, followers of Jesus, women they knew, they had gone to the tomb, but there was no Jesus. And now these women were claiming that some angels had told them that Jesus was alive. Now, all this was just too crazy for them, too much. Had the women themselves gone crazy? Was the disappointment and the grief about what happened to Jesus, was it just too much for them to handle? Surely these rumors couldn't be true. Jesus was cursed. And him rising from the dead, even if he had been the Messiah, that wasn't written in God's playbook. Nowhere in the Torah does it say that. So now Jerusalem had turned into this crazy town, a first century scene from the Twilight Zone, or even worse, an episode of The Walking Dead. So these two followers of Jesus, they just wanted to get out of town, get out of that crazy town. And on their way to Emmaus, a stranger approaches them. Now, they don't realize it's the risen Jesus. He looked like a stranger because of his glorified body. And Jesus starts opening up the scriptures for them, revealing that all that was happening was in God's playbook after all. Then further down the road, Jesus breaks bread with them. And when he broke bread with them, they knew. They knew for sure it was him. They knew it when he took that bread and said a blessing over it and broke it and gave it to them. It was Jesus. And that's where today's story picks up in the gospel. The disciples, now that they know what the heck's going on, they know the whole story, they turn back immediately and go to Jerusalem. And now there's a spring in their step. They're smiling and laughing. They can't wait to get back to Jerusalem to tell everybody. When they get there and they're telling their friends, Jesus appears right in their midst. Jesus comes. And they're still scared when he appeared. Hearing it from friends is one thing, but seeing all of this, seeing the risen Jesus, well, that's something else. So Jesus, being Jesus, takes away their fear. Peace. Peace be with you. I love that line. I love that line. To hear Jesus say that, peace. Peace be with you. And then, brothers and sisters in Christ, he shows them his wounds. Go ahead. Go ahead and feel my wounds. What a great story, isn't it? You know what happens on these two disciples on the way to Emmaus, and what happens when they return is such a personal story for me, and a practical one too. You know why? You see, when I'm confused, when I can't put everything together, when I can't make sense of things, when I'm scared to death, Jesus comes. Jesus comes. Jesus always comes to us. And he always comes in a special way at the Mass. When Jesus revealed himself to the two disciples on the way to Emmaus, he did it in two ways. First, he broke open the scriptures for them and showed them that all this was part of God's plan. Second, he revealed himself to them in the breaking of the bread. Breaking open the word, breaking the bread. Sound familiar? It's the Mass. It's the Mass. The liturgy of the word and the liturgy of the Eucharist. Jesus always comes. Jesus always comes. And even if I don't feel his presence, he always comes in a very substantial way, a way that I can't miss, a way that transcends any feelings. He always comes in the Mass, in the breaking open of the word, in the breaking of the bread. He always comes, but in a special way in the Mass. Brothers and sisters in Christ, when Jesus does come, in whatever way he comes showing us his wounds. Even his resurrected body bears the wounds of the crucifixion. You know why? You know why? That's his love language. That's Jesus' love language. A very unique, a very personal, a very profound language of love. He says, just look. Look at my wounds. Do you see how much I love you? Just look. I want to finish up by remembering the meditation we started with. Remember I said, think about the smile we put on Jesus' face when we do good things for others, because loving neighbor is loving Jesus. That's in this story too. Remember the last line of today's gospel? In that very last line, Jesus says, you are witnesses to these things. So you see, brothers and sisters in Christ, when we go out of our way to love others, we are witnesses to these things. We are witnesses. We are witnesses. We are echoing Jesus' love language to the world. We are echoing Jesus when we do things for others. When we do things for others, we're echoing Jesus. See how much I love you? Do you see? Do you see how much I love you?